if you've done anything this week that was more fun than that, you lead remarkable lives. Wasn't that great? The challenge I have at the end of each Vacation Bible School week is to preach their theme. And this week, it is that Jesus rescues. The Temple Mount is up high above the city of Jerusalem. People going up to the mount have to hike up their tunics, walk up the hill or walk up the steps to get to one of the gates of entry. The gates are not wrought iron on hinges. The gates are archways into the stone that enters into the temple area. I just wanted to tell y'all that my trip to Jerusalem was paying off, that I was paying attention when I went to the Temple Mount. On this day, Peter and John were headed to 3 o'clock prayers that afternoon. And they went into one of those gates called the Beautiful Gate, and there sits a man who since birth has been unable to walk, which means that every day his buddies have to pick him up, carry him up to the gate, where he leans against the wall with a tin cup and a desperate look, and he waits for those who are entering for prayer. And when the line begins to form, he shakes and rattles his cup and the coins, bringing attention to his lame condition, to his financial need. Folks are moved by seeing him there. They dig into their tunics. They toss a few coins his way. They feel better having done a good deed, and he's got a little something to make it another day. Well, on this day, the line is forming to get into the temple for 3 o'clock prayers. The man born lame looks up at 2 followers of Jesus, asks them for some change as they're headed into the gate, and Peter and John stopped and did something most people do not do. Even those who offer money and are moved to compassion rarely do what Peter and John did. The scriptures tell us that they looked at him. It's an odd detail. They looked at him, not his tin cup, not his condition. They looked at him, the man behind the eyes, the him that is there. And then Peter said, if you're expecting silver or gold, I have neither. But what I have, I'll certainly give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk. And the man who had begged for help every day of his adult life, every day asking for some little relief, never considered he could be actually rescued. But when you are powerless, Jesus rescues. We've been hearing all morning all the fun songs from the children. They've been learning, singing about this Jesus who rescues. And the truth is, they are ahead of most of us. Because children are accustomed to feeling powerless in ways we are not. They don't decide their schedule. They can't drive. Most of their decisions are made for them. So it's easy enough for them to be able to admit that they're powerless. But the older we get, the harder it is to admit that we are also powerless, which means it's harder and harder to get rescued. Let's talk honestly a minute about power, what it is, what it isn't. When I was teaching leadership at the seminary, I read a book on power. I thought that's something I ought to read, teaching leadership. I ought to read a book about power. I made it through about 50 pages. I was so revolted I couldn't finish it. I had to put it down. In the first 30 pages or so, I ran into these 2 quotes. The surest way to keep your position and build a power base is to help those with more power enhance their positive feelings about themselves. Here's one on how to advance at work. highlight those dimensions of job performance that favor you and work against your competition. See, the advice is how to get ahead, how to knock people down out of your way so that you can have a bigger job title and more power. And these shallow pieces of advice about how to get power suggest that those at the top of the food chain are the people with the most power. That power is something assigned by position or status. But I think we have seen this week clearly and painfully that it's a lie. Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain were professionals at the top of their game. They were the envy of people who wished they had power. But powerlessness takes on a lot of different forms. Power, real power, is not about job title or elected office or who's the most popular girl in high school. Real power is about being able to tame the zoo that lives within. And ironically, real power starts with knowing that you're powerless. And that God is the only one who can enter into the chaos and rescue and tame all of our unsettled self. And how I wish those tragic stories in this week's news had been different. And how it could have been if they had sung the songs and learned the lessons these children sang and learned this week. That Jesus rescues the powerless. In one of the skits this week, Charlie Dewar was on stage. He was a man who had been skydiving, and it went terribly wrong. He ended up trapped on an island. 548 days he was alone on that island. When Ty Thomas shows up on the island. And so Charlie got all excited that this might be it, this might be his rescue. But Ty told him he had been shipwrecked, and he ended up on that island needing to be rescued too. And in their skit back and forth, they agreed that at least they wouldn't be lonely while they were waiting to be rescued. Which might be the true story of our condition. That if we're honest, at some level we're all powerless people in need of rescue, and we need companionship and a place to be vulnerable until the rescue comes. It's one of the great gifts of church and community. It's a place of companionship while we wait on the rescue. My first job at the seminary, 32 years old, I went to be director of admissions. So I traveled all over the Southeast, going to undergraduate colleges, trying to recruit people who were called to ministry to come to the McAfee School of Theology to study. So every week I'm in the car going to another undergraduate place. And there were lots of other seminaries doing the same. And at certain events, Seminary Day at Samford or Furman or Carson Newman or somewhere, we would all end up in the same town at the same time. Well, you do this long enough with the same group of folks, you become buddies. And so after these long days of recruiting and all that, the competition of it would set aside. We'd go out to dinner, hang out. We became friends. But one night, we were sitting up late in the hotel lobby, just two of us. The conversation turned from banter to transparency. And one of my colleagues started talking about her finances. We were all broke. I mean, we were all making piddling little salaries. But she confessed that she and her husband were really on the brink. They were at a real risk of going under financially. And somewhere in just this blah lobby of a hotel you've seen 100 times, something holy happened. She told me she was powerless. And clearly silver or gold had I none. But we sat there in the pain of what she shared, and somewhere in just the sharing of it, God showed up. And it gave some sense of holy to what at the time looked tragic. We both had a sense that Jesus rescues the powerless. Another story. It was a guy's night. There were about 8 or 10 of us. We were sitting around a big table at Kevin Rathbun's steakhouse. Dark walls, guys, steaks going by, sizzling on the plate. 3 or 4 of the guys at the table had cigars stuck in their sport coat pocket for later that night. Lots of testosterone. It was a guy's night. We're talking politics and golf shots and where's your favorite steakhouse? And then the tempo changed. One of the guys raised his wine glass and said to the others around the table, let's check in with each other. How are you guys really doing? Let's go around the table and I'll go first. And he went on to say that business was going well. Things were doing great at his business, but things were really tough at home. And he told some hard stories. The next guy raised his wine glass, told us about the pressures he was feeling at work. He was so stressed at work. He also told us about a kid of his who had gone rogue and his voice cracked when he talked about his son. Here we were, 8 or 10 guys sitting around a table at a steakhouse. Then the guy at the end of the table, the guy right next to me on my left, raised up a water glass. And he said, most of you know I'm an alcoholic. It's a lonely and scary life. But this year I've joined and gotten involved in a church. I've made friends, found support. I'm involved. I give back. They count on me. In many ways, he said, this has been the best year of my life. And in a matter of minutes, I had gone from bragging about golf shots to wiping my eyes with a big steakhouse napkin. When you're powerless, Jesus rescues. Brené Brown says, the difficult thing is that the vulnerability is the first thing you look for and the last thing you're willing to show. In you, it's courage and daring. In me, it's weakness. I didn't plan for the vacation Bible school sermon to be this sermon, to be honest with you. But in light of this week's news, I felt I needed to say this. Experts are expecting that the news of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain's death will inspire copycats, so there is no more urgent time to say what we need to say and what the children have been singing all week. If you feel powerless, Jesus saves. Like the 2 stories I just told, if you will offer some vulnerability about the pain you are in, there will be grace and help and maybe even rescue. If you risk, you may be set free. Peter said to the man born blind, or rather lame, he said, if you're expecting silver or gold, I have neither. But what I have, I will give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk. And he reached down, he took him by the right hand, he helped him up onto his feet. His feet and ankles were immediately made strong. He started to walk. He went with them into the temple, and then his walk got a little bit of a dance in it. While others were making the slow, pious walk into the temple, he's flitting around, dancing, skipping, leaping, praising, carrying on. Others pointed at him. They said, Isn't that the guy who sits at the beautiful gate asking for handouts? They were amazed. But the man was leaping and praising and making a scene because he was free. He had been powerless and he had been rescued. That is the good news. Jesus rescues the powerless. Let's stand and sing our gratitude.